We're at the Ichilov hospital in Tel Aviv, where some of the Israeli hostages released by Hamas are slowly recovering from their 2-year ordeal. Tonight, some of their families have been speaking for the first time since their loved ones returned home. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the bodies of 45 Palestinians killed during the war and taken to Israel were returned to the territory. But there is also uncertainty tonight and signs of fragility in the ceasefire and peace plan. This evening, Hamas has released the bodies of 4 more hostages, but 20 are still in Gaza. And Israel says it'll restrict aid entering the territory and keep the key crossing at Rafah closed until Hamas hands over more of the dead. In the territory, 7 people were killed by Israeli forces today after soldiers opened fire at Palestinians that they say had tried to cross into an area still controlled by the Israeli military. Well, international news organizations, including the BBC, are not allowed to report from Gaza. So Jeremy Bowen has our top story tonight from Jerusalem.
Somewhere in Gaza's devastation are the bodies of hostages. The failure of Hamas so far to find all their graves in the rubble is putting an early crack in the ceasefire agreement. It said that all hostages, alive and dead, should be returned home at the same time. Israel dismissed Hamas's explanation that it's hard to locate graves in this blasted landscape. Its response, reducing aid into Gaza by half and keeping the border crossing with Egypt closed, is a sign that the ceasefire is fragile. Tonight, 4 more bodies are being transferred to Israel. That means 20 others are still missing. Israel should now return more Palestinian bodies it has kept to Gaza. The ceasefire relies on both Israel and Hamas keeping promises. All the bodies brought into Israel are going to the National Forensic Science Center for identification. One of the men was Guy Iluz, who was 26, killed after he was taken from the Nova Music Festival. 23-year-old Bipin Joshi, on the left in the cap, was a Nepalese agriculture student, just arrived in Israel on his first trip abroad when Hamas attacked. 10 Nepalese students were killed. Survivors say Bipin saved them when he threw a Hamas grenade out of their shelter before he was taken. The UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, sees a threat to his 60-day plan to flood Gaza with aid.
We need the agreement to be implemented in full by both sides. And so that does mean that Hamas have got to get their bodies home as they promised. But it also means that Israel has to keep the crossings open and allow us to deliver the aid that is so desperately needed at scale. So those reports have got to us. We're already on it. We're raising those with the Israeli authorities. We've got to get this aid in, hundreds of trucks a day. And we can't let this agreement get derailed.
Inside Gaza, Hamas is reasserting itself, turning its guns on armed clans it accuses of collaborating with Israel. Hamas is refusing to disarm. That's another potential deal breaker in the Trump plan for peace in Gaza.
I just want to thank everybody.
At the Sharm el-Sheikh summit and before that in Jerusalem, Donald Trump proclaimed that the Gaza deal would lead to overall Middle East peace. The issues over bodies and weapons are more than snags. They're signs of trouble ahead. And again, on his way home, he refused to say whether he supports Palestinian independence.
I'm not talking about single state or double state or 2-state. We're talking about the rebuilding of Gaza.
What's the road ahead for governing Gaza? Because
a lot of people like the 1-state solution. Some people like the 2-state solutions. We'll have to see. I haven't commented on that.
Gaza has a greater area of destruction than either Berlin or Hamburg in 1945, according to one assessment of satellite data. Today, 7 Palestinians were killed by the IDF. It said they were too close to their positions. The best hopes of more than 2 million Palestinians who live in Gaza and Israelis concerned about their security start with a robust ceasefire. This one is looking weak. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Jerusalem.
We'll hear from Jeremy a little later, but former captives at this hospital and others here in Tel Aviv are getting the medical and psychological support they need. Their rooms are large enough for family members to be with them. There are home comforts and space for their children to play. The transition, the reintegration back into normal life has begun. And tonight, some of their families have been speaking about their joy and gratitude, as well as anger. The remains of other hostages are still in Gaza. The warm embrace of a mother's love. Elkanah Bobet feared he'd never experience this again. Back with his family and wife Rivka.
Yesterday I saw my husband and Re'em, my son, being reborn. Seeing them embrace the moment that even though Elkanah was weak, he could not stop. He had to hold him very, very hard. And my son got his father back, and as a mother, I could not ask for more.
Tonight, there are more stories of the reunions, of families made whole again, and relationships rekindled. A gaunt Nimrod Cohen can smile again.
When I was united with Nimrod, we did not say a single word. We just hugged each other, and we just let the tears flow.
And at Ichilov Hospital, the relatives of a number of hostages recounting the smiles of children held by their fathers once again. But Lishay Miran, reunited with her husband Omri, wants to remind the world the remains of some hostages are still in Gaza.
I want to mention that there are still 24 hostages held by Hamas, whose families long for foreclosure. They deserve to be honored and given a proper burial. I call on the international community to keep pressure on Hamas. We will not stop our as family until all the remaining 24 hostages are home.
But Lishay's husband is home, and his brother-in-law told me how they've tried to smooth his return.
My sister showed him a video we prepared as a family of Roni Nama growing during those 2 years.
Yes, Samula.
It was important to us that he watches those critical moments he missed. We wanted him to come to the first meeting with the understanding that they look different, but also with the understanding that they went through so much without him. But there is a future ahead. Those happy moments he missed, there will be more happy moments in the future.
The reflection there of the relatives of one hostage now back home. Well, in Gaza, diggers have begun to clear rubble and some aid is beginning to go in, but Israel says it'll restrict the number of trucks entering until more of the dead hostages are returned. Now, Palestinian prisoners released by Israel yesterday have been sharing their stories. Lucy Williamson has been working with freelancers in Gaza to compile this report about one free detainee's experience as he returned home.
They told him there was nothing to come back to, Shadi said, that his house was gone and all his family were dead. For Shadi Abu Sido, after 20 months in Israeli detention, the arms of his wife were overwhelming. The sight of his children, too much to take in. After the lies of an Israeli intelligence officer had broken him, he said, this was the moment he came alive again.
It was an indescribable moment, a psychological shock. After all this destruction, after all these martyrs, my family was still alive. He'd been lying when he told me, "We killed your family, we killed your children." His words were stuck in my head when I saw them.
Shadi arrived back in Gaza yesterday, one of almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners exchanged for Israeli hostages under the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan. A photojournalist himself, he was filmed by TV crews taking his first steps back on home soil looking lethargic and drained. Today we filmed him again, a different man. Shadi said an Israeli officer showed him proof his family house had been bombed. The prison service said they operated in line with the law and were not aware of any such incidents taking place. Shadi also accuses Israeli forces of physical abuse, beginning with his detention at Shifa hospital while reporting there in March last year.
He tied me up, naked, and started beating me. I have broken ribs. They healed the wrong way. That was the first type of torture they did to me. They kept me naked for more than 10 hours in the middle of winter.
We put his allegations to the Israeli army, which said it needed more information and that it obeyed Israeli and international law. This morning, Shadi woke in terror at 5 a.m. The war around him has stopped, but his own battle for peace and security has just begun. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Ramallah.
Well, in a moment we'll hear from Jeremy in Jerusalem, but first to Sarah Smith, who's in Washington. I just wonder, Sarah, is there any queasiness perhaps at the White House that perhaps this ceasefire is beginning to become a little unstitched?
Absolutely none that's apparent in any way, Clive. Donald Trump sounds supremely confident about the ceasefire, and he is behaving as though the whole peace deal has been done, that there's no more work to go. And of course, that is not the case. And one of the most contentious things is that Hamas have not yet agreed to give up all of their weapons, and that might be very difficult to do. So that's something Donald Trump was asked about in an event at the White House a little earlier.
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games.
And then he went on to say that that disarmament would happen quickly and possibly violently. And he was asked about a timeline. He said it would happen in a reasonable time, probably pretty quickly, without giving us any more details. He said he had been assured by the top leadership in Hamas that they would be prepared to give up their weapons. The other concern here is how much longer Donald Trump will stay focused on this Middle East peace process. If he believes he has already done the deal, he may quickly shift his attention to other things. He was crucial to getting this deal done. Will he stay engaged enough to intervene at other key steps? He's already talking about wanting to move on to dealing with Ukraine and Russia. President Zelensky will be here at the White House on Friday, asking President Trump to supply him with Tomahawk weapons. There are so many other things for him to deal with. Will he remain? Will he keep his focus on the Middle East process?
Sarah, thanks for that. To you, Jeremy, in Jerusalem. We just heard from Washington there the sense that there's nothing to see here. As far as the White House is concerned, the ceasefire is going according to plan. What's your reading?
I would imagine if his officials closer to it are looking at what's going on, they will be concerned. Because there are key parts of the deal. One is to do with returning bodies. There are problems with that. One is to do with bringing aid in. There's problems with that. And reopening the crossroads. There's problems with that. And what about the future of Hamas weapons? They have intimated that heavier weapons, not that they've got that many of them left, might be given up, but they want to keep the weapons that they have because, first of all, that is deep in their ideological DNA, as you know, the full name is the Islamic Resistance Movement. And also, I think they're worried that if they're not armed, there are plenty of people out there in Gaza who would like to take their revenge on them and will come after them. So what they're doing at the moment, actually, is putting armed men on the streets with their masks, with their weapons, and they are cracking down on armed clans, extended families and groups who have weapons themselves to reassert their power, to send a message to Gazans, don't mess with us, and to the outside world that they are still there. So these are problems. I mean, it's not an end to the ceasefire, far from it, and all ceasefires start with difficulties. However, it is concerning that a deal that is not supported by firm agreements and a lot of detail is already running into some kind of trouble, and it would be complacent to say that it is not.